Are you one of the people that enjoy destroying fellow Guardians in Crucible? Do you enjoy the sweaty meta loadouts, or do you enjoy something a little more niche and unique? I might have what you're looking for. Hi, my name is Mothman. You probably have no idea who I am or what I do, and you know what? That's okay. All I ask for is a moment of your time, so take a seat and listen to a story of how these exotic boots are now stapled to my Warlock in almost all levels of content. So where do we begin? Well, let's start with the exotic boots in question. Rain of Fire was released in the Season of the Haunted and can be found farming solo Legend Lost sectors, and after acquiring once, you can farm them from any source that drops exotics. The TLDR of its exotic perk, Soaring Fusilier, is air dodging reloads all weapons, not just the equipped ones. Getting kills with fusion rifles gives you the Radiant buff for a time limit of 7.5 seconds, and grants a passive 30 to the airborne effectiveness of all fusion rifles. Now, for a TLDR, that's a lot of stuff that it does. So, why am I claiming these boots never come off my Warlock? Well, it all started with a crazy idea. But to start this conversation, we need to talk about the basic view of these boots. What do? They give you an auto reload ability when playing on a Solar Warlock with Icarus Dash. Okay, that's pretty nice. Say for instance you're in the War Priest encounter and you are stuck playing a Well of Radiance like all of us Warlock mains do in any raid setting. You're using your favorite DPS weapon and now we're out of ammo in your bag. Just do a quick bunny hop and dash backwards and boom, all good. Faster than most reload weapons outright. That's handy. You essentially have a marksman dodge, but on a much faster cooldown than any hunter can hope to imagine. But that's not the main reason why I love these boots. It's actually the second piece that I talked about, getting the Radiant buff. Why is that the icing on the cake for me? Well, it's basically a free 10% damage boost that you can infinitely refresh so long as you are using fusion rifles. But then comes the issue of ammo and running out of special. Well, if you're a degenerate like me and got the Vex Mythoclast on your first clear of Vault of Glass, then you would know a primary fusion rifle that functions like an auto rifle on steroids would work very well with this. So using that, you get a 10% damage bonus on kills with this gun with infinite ammo as of Season 15. But if you also have the Catalyst, it essentially gives it its original perk of crowd control from D1, meaning it now gets a 20% damage buff per kill. So one kill, 30% damage buff, without having to jump through any convoluted hoops other than the main draw of the perk, which is, well, use a fusion rifle. Which means you essentially are just a monster to minor and major enemies in PvE, and are just an absolute menace in PvP, as well as just being able to reload just by dashing forward. So it's only Vex Mythoclast that makes me want to use these boots? No. Okay, let me preface this part by saying this. I am not an avid PvP player, nor do I consider myself good, but I know a capable power when I see one. This is where I found my love of these boots and dug myself down into this rabbit hole to show all of you why these boots need to be used more. How do people use fusion rifles in PvP? Most slide around a corner, burst one person, then swap to another weapon to engage in a longer distance battle. A few people keep it out now that the perk Successful Warm-Up exists, and allow even more ease of use to fusion rifles. But now using Rain of Fire, you can get a kill with a fusion rifle and get a 10% damage bonus for any weapon. So you can switch off of your God Roll Cantata and get slightly more damage per hit, or even switch to a good fast-firing SMG such as the Funnel Web and just destroy people. But here's when I thought, if I'm swapping off of a fusion rifle to use another gun, what else can I do to make it better? I know a few content creators have touched on this method that I'm about to showcase. One that comes to mind is Cool Guy, but it doesn't even scratch the surface. The whole focus now isn't going to be getting just the Radiant buff. It's also going to be focused on showcasing the perk Harmony. Getting a kill with another weapon and switching to the weapon with Harmony grants a 20% damage bonus and a much less important 15 handling. So all in all, it's a 30% damage buff. Cool, but don't perks like Kill Clip do the same thing? So why should I use Rain of Fire with Harmony builds over Kill Clip? Well, the answer is in the duration. Kill Clip lasts 4 seconds, while Harmony lasts a significant 7.5 seconds, which, wouldn't you know it, is the same duration as the Radiant buff. If you happen to have a crafted weapon with Harmony, the timer gets extended to 8 seconds. So what I'm proposing is Kill Clip, almost double the duration. This is where I need to emphasize how bad I am at PvP. But if I can do stupid things with this setup, think of the potential of someone who is actually competent in a player versus player setting. Now let's talk weapons. First off, you need a fusion rifle to start it out. Well, I already mentioned one that can be really used all on its own, Vex Mythoclast, but what if you don't have it or want to try something different? Well, look no further than main contenders for this build. You have main ingredient, Jotun, likely suspect, Lorentz driver, Lord forgive me for that, which is great, but now that stasis fusion rifles exist, you can use Deliverance, Burden of Guilt, Riptide, or even Arbalest. I am so sorry. And if you just want to fill out that heavy slot with something, you can throw on a linear fusion rifle, Sleeper Simulant. I've also found some joy in using 1K just for a little bit more chaos. Now we can talk about your primary weapons, the one you swap to. As I've said before, you can use any weapon you want and get a 10% damage bonus, allowing you to outperform players who aren't the sweatiest of the sweats. Now, if you want a real chance at competing, let's look at weapons that roll with Harmony. You can choose these weapons based on personal preference or based on which map you're playing at the time. To start, you have New Purpose from Duality, Pure Poetry from Strikes, Eyes Luna from Grasp of Avarice, and Submission from Vow of the Disciple. Moving to energy, you have Out of Bounds from Crucible and Punching Out from Strikes as well. Being able to give weapons a damage bonus that rivals Kill Clip in PvP is incredibly powerful and underrated, especially when those weapons might not have a damage perk that allowed that to happen, such as Frenzy, or perks that are harder to proc in those instances like Adrenaline Junkie or Swashbuckler. As you have seen from the background gameplay, this build gives these weapons so much more potential than initially thought, and for a longer lasting duration as well. I personally have found the most enjoyment out of using Submission and Deliverance. The clean sight, as well as how smooth it feels, just makes that 30% damage buff even better. Using this build, you will melt Guardians. Getting 2 taps with a 120 and a 140 is just amazing. A 2 burst with a high impact pulse feels rewarding as hell, and watching your 900 RPM SMG go burr is so disgusting it makes me sick. And did I mention this also works on any subclass? So Devour Warlock or Stasis turrets on top of getting an absolutely disgusting damage bonus is just something to behold. If you want to go even further, use the Solar Fragment's Ember of Solace, so your Radiant buff becomes 15 seconds instead of 7.5 seconds, Ember of Empyrean, so that if you were using a Solar primary weapon, that extends the Radiant buff timer for each kill, meaning you don't have to swap back to the Fusion Rifle if you feel like you aren't able to, or are just kind of in the zone with your current gun and just want to keep going with that. And the final one that's not as important to me, but one I still enjoy running, is Ember of Torches. So powered melee attacks can give you that Radiant buff as well. It may not proc Harmony, but it's still a 10% damage buff for just clipping someone with a Celestial Fire. But anyway, I think that's all for me. If you did enjoy this video, thought this idea was actually pretty cool, found something you didn't know, or just enjoyed my odd personality, why don't you subscribe? I also have a Twitch and a Twitter that will be in the description. I'm trying to stream more and, Twitter exists. Otherwise, have a good night, have a nice lunch, and go melt some Guardians in the Crucible better than I can.